Oh, live now. Ross, live now.
Oh, there we go. There we go. See, welcome to the stream that's got more glitches than Cyberpunk 2077. This is Sleep Suplex Retweet. This is our WrestleMania Night 2 preview. Hoping to get through it without throwing our Wi-Fi routers out our windows in absolute rage tonight. I'm Ross McLeod, joined again by Scott and Dave.
Thank you for having me.
So, as we're live now, as our producer texts us saying, sorry, it took ages to go live. See, for once it's not us, but when we drag someone in to help,
third time lucky.
And it was maybe a prelude to how this was going to go. Guys, we should have known that we caused the rain delay at WrestleMania because our live stream went off with, I was about to say without a hitch. No, our live stream went off with many, many, many hitches. And then WrestleMania began, and Scott, we have the great sight that will live in our memory forever of Samoa Joe and Michael Cole in ponchos looking like two tourists at Disneyland's Flim Ride.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure I got photos with Mum and Dad on holiday after coming off a ride in similar looking ponchos, so that was funny to see. And yeah, it feels like our preview fitted what would end up happening with Mania and the delays, and thankfully they filled time best they can, but it's not ideal for UK fans. You're already staying up late enough as it is. But also in terms of this stream, I would like to say in terms of producing, I would like to apologise for anything I've said about Daniel Campbell or the months he's been here, because clearly his job is harder than it looks.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dave, not all bad though for WWE, because their roster stood up and delivered. You know, for unscripted promos, DC Productions is the best. I didn't blame him. It was Scott. I'm very well aware of the top level producer Daniel Campbell does. Trust me. The roster stepped up and delivered some great off the cuff scripted promos. We saw how much this meant to Drew McIntyre last night.
Yeah, it was. It came across as much more natural, you know, these sort of opening interviews, and it was sort of a blessing in disguise, given the rain delay caused, you know, the show to be halted for about half an hour. So seeing these sort of raw, unscripted promos, like especially from the likes of Jazz and Braun Strowman, it goes against, you know, they're supposed to maintain these characters, but seeing them naturally, you know, in an interview segment, it just felt much more genuine, and it was, in a way, it was kind of like a nice start to the show. So yeah, I think there was silver lining in the dark rain clouds over Raymond James Stadium that night.
David, whoever gives you your Wi-Fi coverage should give you a refund because you broke up about 9 times there. So we'll move in. Scott, I'll come to you first. Just a quick, brief, 30 seconds. Your match of the night, what was it?
I'll stay with the main event because we talked about the historic nature of it throughout the pre-show as WWR want to do these types of matches, and they had a lot to look to being the main event and having such a bad build. And just the memory of that sound that Bianca made when she hit Sasha with it towards the end, that will live with me forever.
Yeah, an absolute slash right across Sash Banks' stomach when she whipped her with the braid. David, I'm going to come to you. Match of the night for night one, other than the women's title match.
See, I'm kind of torn between two, because I actually found the Bad Bunny Damian Priest tag team match quite entertaining, a lot more than I thought it should be. But I think in terms of pure wrestling, I'd have to give it to Seth Rollins and Cesaro.
I think Sean means it's Shane O'Clock. I'm going to go quickly just for shock factor. Drew McIntyre, Bobby Lashley. I don't think any of us thought that Drew was going to lose. I think we all thought this was built up for him to get his win back, which he didn't get in front of the crowd. But Mick Foley described it best: a full Nelson technical submission win, and the WWE title match at WrestleMania in 2021. David, it was a shock to see.
Mm. Yeah, it certainly was, and because that's the sort of finish you would see in the sort of old classic WrestleMania matches. You know, the traditional, like a traditional submission hold, as opposed to sort of like a grand, spectacular finish, which it made for a nice change of pace. But the result definitely was a shock in its own, because you know I don't think a lot of people expected Bobby Lashley to retain. But you know, we discussed this last night in that you know we were almost not prepared for Lashley's reign to end, and that preparedness kind of just sort of came true. But it was at the expense of cheering for someone like our own like fellow countrymen.
Michael asked, do you think they're holding putting on the belt back on Drew until SummerSlam with more fans in attendance? Scott, I'll give that one to you and then we'll move on.
I don't think it's a case of how many fans are there, because you know they made a big deal of like technically being fans there with the Thunderdome. They beat Orton for it, and then they talked about being fans here. I think it's a case of they're not done with Drew as a main event, because Cole was very quick to say that Drew didn't tap out; he passed out, which means they want to keep him somewhat protected. I think it's just a case of, we talked about it before, it would be sad to see Lashley's reign end so soon, because he'd actually been doing some of the best work he'd done on best work he'd done in his career up to this point. So maybe they want to see that continue, and Drew will get it back later. So it won't be the last time we see him in this high profile position, but I think it's just they're really happy with what Lashley's doing right now.
Yeah, and just to quack you there, Stephen has messaged, I'm producing while holding my nephew. So Stephen, running a nursery and a streaming site, is there nothing he can't do? And here he comes, there he's there. Doesn't he look cute? But he'll grow into his head. But enough about Stephen. As we move on to night two, guys, some really big matches on this card. We've got the Raw Women's title with Asca versus Ripley, the Fiend versus Randy Orton, Big E and Apollo in our Nigerian drum match, because we're all buzzing for that, for the IC title, Kevin Owens versus Sami Zayn, Riddle versus Sheamus for the United States title, and a match we skipped over last night, the Women's Tag Turmoil. Some shock winners there, Dave, and Natalia, and, well, not for you. You and Grant, the other people to back Natalia and Tamina there.
Yep. We're always behind Natty and Big Tam. And you know what the difference was? When they cut that promo on Talking Smack with Paul Heyman, that's when I thought they might actually do something with them. So that's what sort of implied me to go for them, and lo and behold, it paid off.
Yeah, and Scott, we've talked about the Goat Tones on Saturday Draft Live, the team of Ryan and David Campbell. Their draft team, their tag team this year is Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler. I think we can maybe say well done to them, because I do not see Natalia and Tamina beating Shayna Baszler and Nia Jax unless it's leading to the breakup of Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler.
Yeah, and I think they even said in our little draft group chat they kind of wish they kept the captaincy on them, because they put it on Daniel Bryan. It's still going to come down to him, I think, if they're going to win the season, if he comes out as Universal Champion. But yeah, I'm in two minds of this, because I want the reign of Nia and Shayna to end, because I think it's gone on a bit long. They've beaten so many people. But I'd also rather not see Tamina with a title, because I remember the predictions last night. I switched from Lana and Naomi to Billy and Carmella because they got added late, and it made subtle difference because they lasted a whole entry longer than they did. You know, I actually like the Riot Squad for most of it. They had this really cool Joker and Harley Quinn inspired outfit. But we have the team who don't want to live on their family's legacy, who hit a heart attack and a Superfly splash during the match.
I know.
It's former 24/7 champion.
God, shut up. Just a quick question for you guys. Obviously, WrestleMania 2 nights last night. This year. If rain delay had happened in a sort of the usual WrestleMania where there's 16 matches on the card and it's 8 hours long, with the rain delay, do you think they would have maybe just put Nia and Shayna in the turmoil match, or do you think this would have been one of the casualties of maybe time constraints if this was a one-night WrestleMania? Dave, I'll go to you for
that. I think if they were under time constraints, I imagine they'd rather just cut the match entirely rather than have to change a match altogether in terms of planning and strategy and stuff. We saw it at WrestleMania 29 when we had that 8-person mixed tag match cut before Rock versus Cena. I mean, I don't think anybody was particularly, waiting for it, shall we say. But if the rain delay was to apply to any other WrestleMania, I would imagine like a full-length WrestleMania would have had matches cut out as a result.
Yeah, and Scott, you said you don't want them to win. You changed your pick, obviously, as you mentioned. David Campbell, when we do our regular ESSR sweeps, wasn't happy that with a new person added to the match, which is always the rule, I allowed people to change their pick. You were the only person that took up that option. David Campbell texted me this morning saying, I'm really glad I made such a big fuss about that rule because it made such a big difference.
Yeah, I do agree with Dave because I think this would have got cut. I was like, if this was a one-night WrestleMania, we'd had these delays. I would have went to my bed because I'm like, I'm not staying up for a one-night WrestleMania. That's usual length. I'm lucky that this went late enough as it was, but like if this was still a one-day WrestleMania with all the matches, they probably would have crammed on it. Again, you'd see the sun coming across the horizon as you were getting up. Again, the posties coming around as you're about to go to your bed.
Oh Christ, David, obviously you and Alan McLucas at WrestleMania 35, leaving Gary Kernahan's when we could all watch the wrestling together.
Yep.
You guys drove home in the sunlight, for Christ's sake. Me and Scott, when I stayed in Scotstoun, just 2 minutes down the road from Whiteinch, me and Scott walked home in the daylight. The butcher's was open, everything was open. It would have been an absolutely weird scenario had this been a one-night WrestleMania, I think. But we'll move on from one women's title match to another. Asca versus Rio Ripley. Scott, I think with everything surrounding Charlotte Flair, I think she was probably going to be in this match. Rio Ripley's been brought up, not as soon as I would have liked, but we'll get into that later. And this seems like a WrestleMania dream match that has sort of been rushed due to the crazy COVID world we live in at the minute.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Jack has talked about the frustrations of like how it buggered your plans for Rio Ripley and as a member of your team and to put the captaincy on her. I think it's weird because I think there was a time where it was rumored it would be Lacey Evans v Charlotte at WrestleMania. That got changed because of Lacey's pregnancy, and Charlotte versus Asca. I don't know if Rhea would have been added later. And it's one of those few times, like I know a lot of people online probably won't like me saying this, but it's kind of sad that Charlotte Flair isn't involved in this because it would have been nice for Rhea to pin her 1 year on from last year's WrestleMania, but maybe that can be a SummerSlam match down the line. Who knows? It is weird because on the one hand, I think if they didn't, like they're portraying Rhea as the heel here for some reason, maybe because she's the bigger one, and I think if they hadn't done that, they probably just would have done an AJ Nakamura like this dream match. But I'm looking forward to it regardless. I think it probably could steal the show. I wouldn't mind seeing it open night one, get the night started off hot. And I remember I said last night Sasha was going into WrestleMania without a win at the show, and she's now remains undefeated. So to me, there's one more WrestleMania matches than Sasha Banks. And also, Asuka goes into this WrestleMania without a win either. Mania 34 lost her streak. 35 she was in the Battle Royal, didn't win it, and 36 she and Kairi Sane lost the tag team titles to Bliss and Ross. So Asuka again looks to continue an unbeaten record. Maybe her and Sasha will fight next year when they're looking for their first win at WrestleMania.
Dave, obviously Scott mentioned Charlotte Flair there. I seen a stat last night that was Charlotte Flair and Brock Lesnar not at this year's WrestleMania. AJ Styles is the longest running superstar. It was 6 consecutive WrestleManias. He's been at every WrestleMania from WrestleMania 32 onwards. Charlotte Lacey Evans, I don't think is something that appeals to many people, especially with the surrounding subject matter with Ric Flair and is she or is she not dating Ric Flair. It felt a very Divas title era feud. Do you give Rhea and Asuka a bit of slack for the lack of build they have because of what was the alternative?
Yeah, I do actually, because this is a match I think a lot of fans have been wanting for some time. and it's suitable that it's taking place on WrestleMania because they're both very high-profile NXT Women's Champions, former NXT Women's Champions. But yeah, I think the lack of the belt sort of damages it a little bit. But I think, given the circumstances surrounding, Charlotte Flair's status and Lacey Evans now off on maternity, I think it's a damn good substitute for not having a well-built story behind it. Because even TLC 2017, AJ Styles had to be brought in last minute to face Finn Balor, and that was a much better match than we probably would have got had we seen Finn Balor versus Bray Wyatt. So again, it comes back to a silver lining in the rain cloud, as it were. So I'm hoping these two will deliver on night 2 for sure.
Yeah, Scott, you mentioned Asca. She's not got a win at the show of shows. Rio Ripley 0-1 going into this. Someone's always got to go. Who are you backing tonight? Do you think they'll rush the title onto Rhea, or do you think the lack of builds points to an Asca win?
I think there was some sort of long-term plan for her to win the Raw Women's title shortly after coming up. She left NXT in a high-profile match against Raquel Gonzalez and look where she is now. And I think she will win the title. So plans have changed. I think it'll be a good thing for the women's division. It'll be a boost in needs going into the summer because you got Bianca Belair on SmackDown as the champion and Rhea Ripley as the Raw Women's Champion. They were the last two in the Royal Rumble, two big high-profile members of the NXT Women's Division at one time. So it's nice to see some new faces in the Women's Division. So yeah, Rhea Ripley for the win.
Yeah, nice not to see the usual sort of 4 horsemen sort of love-in, which WWE seems to have. There is other women there. David, I'm going to ask you the same thing. Asca or Ripley, who's winning tonight?
Rhea Ripley. And if I could just expand on that a bit, I've got a sneaking suspicion that this could potentially be a Brock Lesnar's John Cena style squash match.
Very nice. That would be something. I think Asca a couple of years ago would be more of a surprise if that happened. I think Asca now it's not as much of a surprise just with the stop-start sort of booking. I'm going to double down on Rhea Ripley. Picked her from a draft team. It's not worked out. She better get me some points. A WrestleMania captain's title win would do wonders for, well, absolutely nothing. It's the last week. Me and Jack are finishing bottom. We accepted that. So 3 people going for Ripley. I talked about the 4 horsemen. Easy for me to say. 4 horsewomen love-in that WWE tends to have. Charlotte Flair not on the card. Becky Lynch obviously not on the card as of yet. We discussed maybe some rumours that she may show up. But David, ding dong hello.
Ding dong hello. Ding dong hello.
Bayley showed up twice last night. Once to interact with Titus and Hulk Hogan, trying to get in as the 3rd host. And don't do that. And wants to commentate because she can do Michael Cole's job better than he can. Do you think her antics are going to continue on night 2, leading to maybe Becky showing up? Or do you think this was maybe just a one-night thing?
No, I certainly hope she keeps it up because it was certainly a nice, entertaining break between matches. However they interacted with Michael Cole's always been fun to watch. And she does it so well as a heel character. Becky Lynch's original tease of the night 1 Instagram post obviously was trolling, but now she's done another one with night 2. I don't know if she's joking still, but it would be a nice surprise. If Bayley does her Ding Dong Hello segment tonight with Becky showing up surprisingly, because Becky was obviously teasing the idea of appearing on night 1. It obviously didn't come to fruition, but there's every chance it could happen tonight, and I really, really hope it does.
Scott, she did tweet out a tweet saying night 2, but then put only joking and congratulated only the 2nd women's match to main event after her match, featuring Bianca Belair and Sasha Banks. Do you think Bayley will get the segment tonight with Becky Lynch, or do you think this will maybe just be a storyline going forward that Bayley's maybe upset that she wasn't on WrestleMania.
I think it would be nice to see her do something, you know. I'm not saying it'll probably happen, you know, because I don't think Becky needs to come back. I think she's just happy trolling everybody. She might be there to support Seth and everything. But, you know, it would be nice to see Bayley do something worthwhile because, again, she's was only one for women actually wrestling a match at WrestleMania this year. And although maybe I think if she doesn't do anything, that can then fuel her and motivate her to be one of the first challenges for Bianca after WrestleMania. So, you know, I think I'm fine with it either way. I just hope the segments aren't as awkward as there's one like the NWO one because I just hated that whole thing.
Yeah, she really did carry that. Her and Titus did carry that one. One of our viewers, Michael, was talking about last match. Would you call it? Talking about the Raw Women's title match, saying it's not happening tonight, Ross. Charlotte's steamrolling her way in tonight to battle them both. Would not surprise me with WWE. He's also said, do you think if Ding Dong Hello using it for a Becky return is a bigger Mania moment for her than she could have presently had in the ring? I believe so, yeah. We touched on this last night. It's a bigger moment for Becky than just a random match or being in the Turmoil match or the Battle Royal. And for Bayley, it's a bigger moment to be involved in because it will live forever, Becky Lynch's Mania return, than being a throwaway in a Battle Royal or a Turmoil match. So yeah, meaning Bayley. Yeah, Bayley. It's bigger for Bayley. It's bigger for Becky. Just the segment together. Sometimes you need to leave that wee something for the post-Mania feuds. You know what I mean? Because God knows it is a long old slog till SummerSlam. We'll move on to just so much on this card tonight in over 2 days. We'll move on to Fiend versus my notes get jumbled there. I was about to say the Fiend versus Big E. Surprise, that's happening. The Fiend versus Randy Orton. Scott, the Fiend's back after his skin was crackling more than you and Dave's mic on this live stream. Alexa Bliss did a great job sort of bridging this feud until the Fiend's return. She's been the MVP of this feud so far. With fans in the building now, do you think this is going to be a cinematic one, Fiend and Randy Orton, or do you think we'll have an actual in-ring match with Fiend and Randy Orton?
Yeah, because like I said last year, we wouldn't have got as much cinematic an element to WrestleMania last year if there had been fans. Well, we probably wouldn't have got the Boneyard match last year if everything went to plan. But I think we should have still got the Funhouse match last year, regardless of fans. And I think you can still implement some cinematic elements here because looking at the way the feud can build up with the black goo that's coming out of Orton's mouth and everything, you run the risk if you try to use similar shenanigans in front of the live crowd. You risk it being similar to the weird bug prediction at WrestleMania 33, which I'd rather they use this match to erase the memory of that. So I think the live crowd can forgive there being some more cinematic elements to this match, especially given the Fiend's character.
Yeah, Dave, I'll ask the same to you. Do you think this will be more cinematic, or are you fearing that we might have bugs and maggots and snakes on the mat like we did at WrestleMania 33?
No, I'm not worried about that at all. I think they've learned their lesson from WrestleMania 33, and it's been quite an intriguing build to the story, given that most of the interaction between Randy Orton and Alexa Bliss. So having finally Randy facing the Fiend since TLC last year, it's definitely going to be a whole new dynamic, given that the Fiend is essentially been invented again, and I reckon this is going to be a much darker, much more gruesome Fiend than we're accustomed to seeing. Because I think SummerSlam 2019, when we first saw him, he decimated Finn Balor with ease. I mean, I reckon he's going to do much, much worse to Randy Orton, and obviously Randy Orton being the sort of veteran that he is, the professional that he is, I reckon he'll want to do his best to make sure that this version of the Fiend comes across as the best incarnation as there has been so far. So I'm very, very intrigued about this one.
Yeah. So I'll just ask you both quickly, Scott first, then David. Just a name, Fiend or Orton, who's winning tonight?
Fiend, gotta be.
The Fiend.
Fiend. Yeah, I think this character is sort of given Wyatt a sort of WrestleMania streak of his own now. He has to win at WrestleMania. He's the big bad. After such just a horrendous WrestleMania streak as just Bray Wyatt. Oh God, that was awful, those WrestleMania matches. So we move from Fiend versus Orton to a Nigerian drum match, the first ever Nigerian drum match, possibly the last ever Nigerian drum match. Scott, Apollo in the promo on SmackDown said, I'm going to beat, as the beating gets louder and it sounds like the drums of my ancestors, they will finally see me take the Intercontinental title. This to me just sounds like a straight up no holds barred styled match. I don't know. We joked about Apollo's character being a bit Coming to America, right as Coming to America 2 comes out. I'm fearful for what this match could be. It could either be a really good no holds barred match with two really talented guys, or it could be something that a 70-year-old white man thinks black culture is, and it could be a bit cultural appropriation going forward. So I'm a bit weary of this match. But what do you think of the fact that Big E and Apollo are in the match? The drum match is going to mimic the fight scene in Ace Ventura and Nature Calls between Ace and the Tribesman. That was Grand McRobbie. It's a shame Big E's just got a fresh haircut because he could have came up with his hair like the devil horns like Ace Ventura. Yeah, it's got Apollo, Big E. It's been a feud been going on for a while. Do WWE even know how this match will look? I don't even think they do actually. Apollo, Big E, the feud itself. What do you think of the feud itself?
The feud itself, I've enjoyed. I've enjoyed Apollo more than I have in a long time. I think even more so than his NXT days, and because he's finally got a character. I say you said about Coming to America. I feel like Vince, it's been said he's not really up to date on current pop culture. I think he's just only now, like in the last year or so, seen Black Panther for the first time, and this is his way of trying to be hip. Kids like superheroes and things like that, and we saw those guys where the soldiers that came out with Apollo when he first debuted, when he first started talking in the accent. I have a feeling he's just going to get people like some random extras from the performance that are just beating on drums on the outside. J.K. Simmons there as well from Whiplash, asking if they're rushing or they're dragging, and yeah, I think it's just going to be a straight up no holds barred, and it's sad because I think it's going to take away from how good the feud's been, because you got Apollo talking his accent because he got his Nigerian heritage. You got Big E counter with that promo by being from Florida. He's played football at Raymond James Stadium, so the promos have been good. But I think the booking, with the stipulation and that weird finish at Fastlane, have hindered it in some fans' eyes.
David, what's your thoughts been about Apollo's character going forward? Because Big E's character, we've talked about it on Central plenty. I really like the fact that, they talked about it on his 24 documentary. People were like, oh, well, you need to do this, or what you need to do. And it's Kofi Kingston that said, he's a one-of-a-kind guy. You don't know him. You don't tell him how to be. His character is a guy who has fun, who laughs in the face of any challenge, and when it comes to go time, can take you down. Paulo Cruz got a wee bit of a push last year with the US title, but it was still very reminiscent of smiling babyface. This is the first time we've seen him as a proper heel, and accent aside, I'm quite a fan of it.
Yeah, you're not the only one. I recall his United States title reign last year, and I sort of boiled it down to this him earning his dues after five or 6 years of consistent, solid grind to the job essentially. But the one thing he was always lacking was a definitive character. And this and I've said this before, and I'm just going to say it again. This is probably the best thing that could have happened to Apollo Cruz. Not just the heel turn, but the complete reinvention of him, and sort of embracing his his heritage, etc. But I do worry that WWE has, like, as you mentioned, it's sort of verging on cultural stereotyping almost. Like, he walks out with the spear as well, as like a tribal chief in his own way. But as a man from one side of Glasgow, I do appreciate that he wears a green and white scarf down to the ring. I mean, I'm sure you can appreciate that, Ross.
Plenty. Moving swiftly on, Dave, goodbye. Scott, I'm just going to come to you quickly because Dave's completely ruined this match for me. I'm going for the loyalist party of Big E. I don't know about you, as a man who doesn't care about football.
I mean, I'm not saying these guys definitely side with either team, but Big E does wear a lot of blue. I'm just going to lay that out there. I'm not going to let Big E be my draft team figure into this because me and Stephen are finished in 4th place regardless if he wins or not. So Apollo's lost quite a few times. Apollo for the win, it's his 4th or 5th attempt or something like that.
Yeah, I'm going to go Big E. Dave, you've, I believe, went with Apollo.
I have, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Apollo now, because if they're going to go forward with this character, I think he needs to win now. The old character, when he was starting to get a bit more frustrated, Big E kind of, not intentionally, but when he pointed out, I've beaten him 3 times in 6 weeks, that kind of buried that old character. I think he needs the win now. And I think it would be quite good for the fact that Big E kept giving him chances. If Apollo wins and then just doesn't give Big E a chance because he's not worthy or something like that. But as my dishwasher finishes there, as you hear that in the background, we'll move on.
I was wondering what that was. I thought it was like...
It was a full-time whistle. We'll move on to the United States Championship match, guys. Matt Riddle versus Sheamus. A bit of a thrown together match. Sheamus obviously coming off the Drew McIntyre feud, never got his one-on-one WWE title match. Had some great matches with Drew, but did come up on the losing side of the majority of them. Had a wee mini feud with Bobby Lashley, obviously didn't win that. Riddle, we mentioned this on Saturday Draft Live, David. Riddle is playing the role of Keith Lee here because of Keith Lee's injury. Do you think tonight that sort of comes to an end? Because the sort of main roster Riddle is something that's not been firing on all cylinders. It's maybe the character he's trying to play, but for me it's just not working. And I think they got the US title off Bobby Lashley, which was the goal. Had it still been on Keith Lee, I'd be backing Keith Lee tonight. But I think they need a heel win, and I think Sheamus is going to be that one. Do you think that?
No, I disagree, because I actually find Riddle's character to be actually one of the most entertaining aspects of Raw. So he's kind of allowed to sort of do his own thing to an extent, but there's also an element to it where he's just sort of being himself. This very sort of laid back, stoner looking guy behind the scenes, but when he's in the ring, he'll just take your head off. It's that sense of how can I describe it? That sense of relaxation, to think this guy's not a big threat, but when you get in the ring with him, he'll run circles around you. And his inclusion with the scooter as well, it just adds to the hilarity. Like that segment where he just drove past Retribution when Ali was giving them a scolding. I'd consider that as one of my favourite moments of Raw in the last few weeks, because it was meant to be a very serious scalding promo, and Riddle just shoots by on his scooter for a split second, and it just adds a comedic element to it. And then he fluffs his lines with Asca backstage, and he just shrugs it off as if it was nothing. So he's sort of a guy that can get away, with being a comedic character, and he can botch lines and get away with it without facing repercussions. I think he needs to be featured a lot more, not only because he's a very talented competitor in the ring, but he's actually very entertaining when he's outside the ring as well.
Right, Scott, I'll throw it over to you. Riddle, obviously, stand-in, US title, get it off the guy that's going for the WWE title. Do you think he's winning, retaining tonight? We did see on Raw when Sheamus beat him in the non-title match that he was sort of sick of Sheamus taking pot shots at him, and he looked a bit more serious. Do you think he's retaining tonight, or can you see Sheamus?
I've been down that. I would care what Alan Laurie would thinks about it, but since he robbed Ryan Douglas of his Listeners League victory, I'm taking no notice.
No. This is SDL. This is the live stream. Everyone's giving an opinion here.
There's a time and a place for everything, Scott.
What he did.
Right, moving back to Riddle and Sheamus.
Yeah, sorry, I was a bit off my train of thought. But with Riddle, I think, there's not much change in his character from when he was in NXT. I think it's just a case of the writing is different, because obviously the WWE writers, think they know comedy when they write some of this stuff for them. Well, Sheamus, since he's come back, he's done this run of weird stories, but he's made work, like the thing with Jeff Hardy and the addiction story. He was randomly Big E's first singles feud to help Big E get a singles push off to the right start, and they had a really good blow-off match on one of the draft episodes, SmackDown. And then the thing with Drew, he really helped put Drew over in some great matches. Match tonight at Fastlane, I think WWE's going to try and reward him. He's one of these company guys. Miz got kind of rewarded almost with that brief WWE title run as a transitional champ. And I think the fact that Lashley and Riddle were feuding quite a bit before Lashley won the title, I think now that Lashley's retained, Riddle could be a good one-off opponent for him. Revisit that feud during the summer. And I think to free him up again, it's a case of putting the belt on Sheamus. And I think given that Riddle has only got the champion because of plans having to change to Keith Lee, it's more likely that he'll walk out without the title.
Yeah, I think if Keith Lee's fit, they wouldn't want a Riddle-Keith Lee match, I don't think. I think they'd maybe do the sort of transitional champion, face to heel and then back to face with Keith Lee. So I'm going to back Sheamus tonight. I think he's winning. I disagree entirely with what you said, David. I find Riddle to be absolutely insufferable on Raw. I find his promos horrendous. I find the character dull. It's a character that worked when it wasn't on NXT every week. It's one of these characters that when it comes up to the main roster, the overexposure, I think, kills it. I'm sorry, I don't care if he rides a scooter. He's a moron. I'm going to go for Sheamus because, as Scott mentioned, the feuds he's had. I loved the bar brawl with Jeff Hardy. I loved the the Falls Count Anywhere match with Big E. The no holds bars match with Drew. His brief sort of tweener run on Team Raw at Survivor Series. I think this match is a sort of reward for Sheamus, and I'm hoping that he walks away with the victory because I cannot go Riddle at the minute.
And talking about Sheamus, I talk about People's Mania records. I'm also backing him. It's weird. I mentioned 3 years in a row he and Cesaro never won at Mania. He's I think only got one win at WrestleMania. I think it might be the 18 seconds against Daniel Bryan, because after that he teamed with Shaw and Orton to lose to in the Mania 30 Andre Battle Royal, and I don't think he was at last year's Mania.
League of Nations.
So
see that's how forgettable the League of Nations was, Scott.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm glad it brought Wade Barrett's back because that faction is so bad. I'm convinced that's what drove him out of WWE for those 5 or so years he was gone.
Yeah, and who honestly could blame him? Dave, just quickly coming back to you. You're backing Riddle, yeah?
Yeah, I'm back in Riddle. Like, and I'm sorry that this is the part where we have to disagree, unfortunately, because I know we agree on a lot of things. But I'm sorry. I enjoy Riddle. I enjoy his work, his character work behind the scenes, and I enjoy the way he carries himself in the ring. I think he actually is one of the more entertaining guys on the roster.
Someone, I don't know who, but somebody that has access to the Eat Sleep Suplex Retweet Facebook page has commented, Sheamus has been a brilliant asset to Raw since his kind of alignment and break off with Drew. Brilliant work rate as well with matches. Brilliant as well with matches he's had and all. Deserves that title win tonight. I agree. Whoever's on the Facebook page, let me know. That might be Stephen.
Thank you to Sheamus's mother for sending that in to us. I don't know how she got access to our Facebook page, but
yeah, so another one of the Suplex Retweet crew backing Sheamus tonight. I think Dave is doubling down on his Jack Graham. It was me. See, you're the odd one. It was me all along, Ross, says Jack Graham. You're the odd one out here, David, for the Saturday Draft Live people and for the live stream.
Okay, that's okay. I think, well, and there's no bias at all because Riddle's in my draft team this season. So
don't talk garbage. So we'll move on to a match that's probably been in every indie promotion in the mid-2000s. A match we've seen on NXT. A match we've seen at multiple pay-per-views. A match we've sort of seen at WrestleMania before, both men being involved in the WrestleMania 32 ladder match. They're now getting their singles run. A face Kevin Owens going up against a heel Sami Zayn. Scott, and I know you're excited for YouTube sensation. Logan Paul is going to be there. How buzzing are you?
yes, I'm really, really excited. You can see it on my face. I can barely contain myself. I'm happy to see this match. I think I can remember an episode of SmackDown 2017, a few weeks before Sami's turn and aligning with Kevin Owens when they were Team Yip for a while. Being the last time they faced off, they could have faced off in like live events or some of dark matches since then. But the last time I can really remember them actually being at odds was back in 2017. So it's nice that this match feels fresh again after being all over the Indies, being all over WWE. Because like I remember Battleground 2016 was like the last time ever. 2 months later, when Owens was Universal Champion, he beat Sami in like 5 minutes because they needed to fill the time.
Logan Paul's but his brother is worse. Either way, awful having a Paul present.
Grant's not wrong.
Apologies to anyone named Paul out there. Those were the views of Grant McRobbie and not us.
Well, Grant will never be invited on my other show, Scott and Paul's Rambling Podcast, but I do agree with him, his brother, you're a prick, but his brother's worse. I've been said that about me my entire life.
Oh, don't you start.
But I think this is actually the first time, even in their indie days, that Sami's the heel in the equation. And it's interesting how they've managed to do it with his real Pepe Silva conspiracy theory kind of thing he's going with here. Because like Sami for years was a natural face, but I have heard stories that he can rub people the wrong way because he just does talk a lot. He's just because he's so passionate about things that it puts people off sometimes. So maybe that's what they're implementing, his real life personality into his heel persona. Or maybe just Vince like, God, that guy's annoying.
Well, Scott, you mentioned obviously he can put people off. Dave, you're quite off-putting. What's your thoughts on the Sami Zayn character?
To be honest, I'm surprised he's not announced himself as a member of QAnon at this point, the amount of conspiracies, claims he's spouting. But I think that's the parody of the character, because there's been a lot of that in the US media lately surrounding conspiracy theories and what would you with all these chats online. I think that's where the character's coming from, and that's what makes it entertaining. And as Scott pointed out very well, it's weird seeing Kevin Owens as the face, whereas Sami Zayn is the heel, because naturally it's better if it was the other way around. We've seen that in NXT, and we've seen it on like 5 years ago when Sami moved to Monday Night Raw. Logan Paul, I think, is definitely going to be the X factor in this match because it looks like, given what's happened on SmackDown the last few weeks, it looks as if Logan's been giving Sami the cold shoulder in a lot of things, like in the boxing ring. I'm wondering if there might be a twist coming. It looks as if Logan's not going to help Sami, but then he does help him at the last minute. So it's definitely up in the air at this stage because I put down Kevin Owens to win, but it wouldn't surprise me if Logan ended up helping Sami in the end and that got him the win. The only thing I would change, if traveling was still allowed, like, amid, the COVID and stuff, which isn't. I think the only way this match could be better is if it was Kevin Owens.
Say KSI and Kevin Owens. I seen it coming. I seen it coming.
KSI in one corner, Logan Paul in the other. It would have been perfect.
No, we joked about WWE being about 10 years behind pop culture. Logan Paul came to sort of mainstream attention through Vine. So I think Vince McMahon has just found a Vine compilation online. So I look forward to many Vine stars being brought in. I can't remember any of them off the top of my head. But Grammy, Robbie and Alan with quotes there that won't be read out on air, knobs. Just because it's going against me. This is North Korea, all right? So, yeah, Scott, it feels weird, though, to say that Logan Paul is the X Factor in a WrestleMania match. David wants KSI. Why? I would prefer this match with no people from Vine. But
KSI on YouTube, not Vine, so that's problem solved.
No one cares.
I would like this without any Viners or YouTubers. But I think, Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens, it's a match I've backed to maybe steal the weekend or maybe the entire week. And I know that's a tall order after the unsanctioned match. Who do you have to win this match? And do you think it will be a straight up wrestling match, or do you think Logan Paul will get involved and it'll be a bit shenanigan like?
Yeah, I think this match will continue the trend that had some of the matches in night one, especially the main event of like really weird or disappointing build, but fantastic in terms of the execution of it. Because like Seth Rollins v Cesaro was all about Cesaro getting swinging Seth about and Seth not wanting to be swung. So, and then they had one of the best matches of the night last night. They mentioned it earlier. I think Logan. A lot of people compared this to like when Mike Tyson came in, that he came in trying seemingly aligned with one person in a match and then goes with the face in the match at the end. So like Sami will yell at Logan, and because Logan's apparently a boxer now, will punch Sami in the face, lean into a stunner, and then Logan and KO will pose afterwards. But I definitely think KO is winning this one. And I do like that he's kept the KO Mania thing going. You've seen his promo last night, which he was one of the guys who knocked it most out of the park in terms of the off the cuff promo with his KO Mania 5 with he and Sami in place of Macho Man and Hogan. He said the Kevin Powers explode or something like that on it.
Yeah, I did like that. That's one of my favourite ongoing WrestleMania gags. Grant McRobbie says Mayweather to show up and give Paul an unholy scalping. We can dream.
Well, Mayweather's undefeated at WrestleMania, so I mean,
yeah, so is Michael Cole.
Oh, don't.
Right, well, both men won at last year's WrestleMania, Dave. Who's making it 2 in a row this year, Kevin Owens or Sami Zayn?
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if Sami pulled a fluke win with a bit of help, but I'm actually going to go with Kevin Owens on this one. But I think the way that Owens been treating Sami, I wouldn't, like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a twist coming.
If KO doesn't dive off the ship, WrestleMania has been a waste of time. I mean, he dived off a ship last year, not quite as high up as that other one. I think that might be a bit of an ask, that one. But I know that's why I'm so annoyed that Shane McMahon was in a cage match last night. Any other time of year, he'd have been thrown off that pirate ship. I'm
Russ,
going to
we're
go
missing the real picture here, Russ. Logan Paul is the one who needs to take the bump off of the pirate ship, preferably with if somebody is out of place when they try to catch him.
Oh, good.
I'm going to move on for that one. Kevin Owens, I'm going to back for the win here as we move on to the last 10 minutes and our main event of the evening. Much unlike last night, there's not been as many technical glitches, so I didn't forget about the main event. The Universal title match, Roman Reigns, the Royal Rumble winner, Big Edge, and Daniel Bryan, who squeezed his way in here and gave birth to an absolute plethora of memes with him shoved into one-on-one films and one-on-one pictures and some dirty pictures that Grant McRobbie sends me that I delete immediately. Daniel Bryan, Scott's weaseled his way in here. I said to you when we watched SmackDown together, I wasn't a fan of the fact that Daniel Bryan's in this triple threat. I really thought that, Edge and Roman Reigns was the storyline. The spear-off that we never got last year, which was Roman and Goldberg. 1 year later, Edge's story tells itself. Roman Reigns has been the best heel in wrestling. That's my opinion, but I don't think many could argue it. Daniel Bryan, I think, has been shoehorned in here, and I'm not a fan. Pardon me, not a fan of this as opposed to WrestleMania 30.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tough call, I agree, because I remember not being a fan of the idea of it being a triple threat with Daniel Bryan. I thought, I was happy. I wanted to see Bryan v. Roman as part of Roman's, new character, because, I'm also glad we got that match at Fastlane, but I think over time I've become used to it, and I think you said a lot at the time, Russ, during the Raw Report when Edge was coming back and then lead up to his match with Orton, that they were leaning too heavily in on the nostalgia and the comeback and how hard Edge had fought to come back. And we wanted the Edge we remember, and I think the Edge we remember is heel Ultimate Opportunist Edge. And it's like the story with Bryan being involved as the guy that for fans to cheer for has allowed Edge to kind of be not the plain heel like Rowan is, but he's slowly transforming into a heel. And I think coming out of it, a program between him and Bryan, with him being the full-on heel, it could be really good. It could be the best thing about Edge's comeback, and he'll have some of the best matches because he's not like when Batista came out from Mania 30, he's in a lot more. Everyone whereas I felt like when Batista came out was trying to get some cross promotion with Guardians coming out, and then when he left, they tried to mock it, and the film went on to be one of the most successful films of that year. But one of my favourite memes with Daniel Bryan, by the way, is when it said, God created Adam, then he created Eve, then he created Daniel Bryan to make it a triple threat match. I thought it was pretty funny. But
yeah, I like the face-off one where it's Cage, Travolta, Bryan.
Godzilla versus Kong versus Daniel Bryan.
And I mean, I really like Bryan being involved in this. It makes it more unpredictable, and also the promos and the go home show, and with Edge pointing out the fact that it's 10 years today, but people didn't actually mention it as much as they thought. And maybe that's what WWE's doing. They've heard people criticize them for trying to run things at the ground, or talking about history every time they do a first ever with the women's division. So maybe they're not doing it for once to help fuel Edge's full-on heel turn, which comes at WrestleMania.
Yeah, David, I've always said the best characters, heel or face, are people that always have an actual reason to be annoyed, an actual reason to gripe. The fact that Daniel Bryan obviously entered himself in the Elimination Chamber, knew that he would have to face Roman Reigns right after, complained about it the next week in SmackDown, got his Fastlane match. He recklessly bumped both the ref and the special enforcer Edge.
Yep.
He won, but the referee wasn't there. We've seen this a million times before. It sort of feels like Edge has been screwed over. Edge went from number 1 to number 30 to in the Rumble, won the whole thing. It does feel like he has an absolute case to be absolutely pissed off at Daniel Bryan. Daniel Bryan seems a bit more of the heel here, but WWE are sort of training him as a he's a lovable scamp.
You're completely right there, and Edge's rage is pretty much justified in this story. Like, say if you were in that position, right? You had to enter the Royal Rumble at number 1. You've been away for 10 years, and you're trying to reclaim a title that you were never beaten for. And then you get your WrestleMania match by winning the Rumble. It's going to be against arguably the best heel in the company to date so far. And all of a sudden, this third guy has somehow weaseled his way in through trying to argue that he was screwed over, and through technicalities, he tries to weasel his way in to your World Championship match at WrestleMania. I think you'd be a bit ticked off yourself, wouldn't you agree? Because that's certainly how I would respond to it. But Edge has displayed some heelish tendencies in the last couple of weeks, but I believe they're completely justified. Like, because this was meant to be his one-on-one match with Roman, and now we're not getting it. So I think a lot of people were hoping to get a spear off between Roman and Edge, but having the Rated R Superstar Opportunist sort of break out as a result of this booking, it just might work in this instance, and with Edge not being a fully fledged face character this time.
Yeah, I don't see him turning heel, Scott. I know you had a wee point you wanted to make before we move on to predictions, so I'll come to you in a wee sec. I don't think this will be a fully fledged heel turn. I think Edge is winning. I think the whole, like, the lead up, his conversation with Drew McIntyre the night after the Royal Rumble, where he said, "Don't praise me, don't treat me like I'm some legend making a comeback. Like, I will do whatever it takes to get that title back." He'd said the same to, the two in the NXT title match, Pete Dunne and Finn Balor at Vengeance Day. Says, "I might pick the bones of whoever's left when you two tear each other apart." And he waited. He played the mind games with with Roman Reigns, and waited until it was on his terms to say, "By the way, I'll see you at WrestleMania." So I don't think there will be a fully fledged heel turn. I think he's in a place where he won't get booed because of how long he was away. But they don't want him to be a cheesy cookie cutter grit. That was his favourite word of 2020, grit. I don't think they want him to be that cheesy cookie cutter sort of guy. So I think going forward, this will be the Edge character we see, but I'm not thinking there'll be a fully fledged heel turn. Alan Laurie commented, "Edge won't snap tonight, but it's coming soon, and it's going to be amazing when it happens." Well, one of our earlier listeners, Michael Clothier, if that's not how you pronounce your second name, apologies, did say he thinks maybe Drew is being held off for the title until SummerSlam. I think they're maybe holding off for an Edge Roman Reigns one-on-one match to SummerSlam, but I don't see them holding off an Edge becoming champion. But Scott, I know you had a point you wanted to make before we move on to the predictions.
Yeah, I think part of maybe it won't happen here. Maybe it'll happen in the weeks following that Edge going heel. But I think it's because like Edge is at his best when he's a heel. I think some people just have that natural ability, whereas other people like Bryan can go in between, because Bryan's been a fantastic heel in the past, and some people are natural built to be faces. But I think it's a case of like putting all three guys out there, letting fans cheer for who they want to. But I do think Edge is going to steal the win from Bryan to then start the heel turn and a program between him and Bryan weeks following it. Because like there were rumours that there were worries that Roman was going to get cheered by fans, because as heel Danny Bryan once said, fans are fickle sometimes, because like we wanted him to turn heel because he did, and now this is the most fans have appreciated him in a long time, and he is a heel. And so the point of concern is that maybe the one thing they want you to him, you won't. And when you could maybe like put all three guys out there, people cheering for Bryan over Edge, it's like, oh, because he's a face, rather than, oh god, the heel, not the face. Because as much as everybody behind Drew, you could still hear some fake Bobby chants during the WWE title match. Right? So people do appreciate heel work.
Yeah, there was a big section of the crowd like cheering and celebrating when when Bobby retained. It just shows the fact that interesting heels sometimes get a bit more cheers than bland baby faces. But I'm just going to quickly, just a name, guys. Bryan, Edge, or Roman? Who do you have winning tonight? I've got Edge winning. Scott, what about you?
Edge.
And David?
Edge.
Yeah, I don't see Bryan winning. I can see maybe a feud coming with Bryan and Edge after WrestleMania. Maybe Bryan's about to get the pin, Edge throws him out and gets the pin, and it's sort of a, well, we stole my win, where we shouldn't have been there, blah, 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 and they come back and forth with each other. But yeah, I think this is going to be one of the best WrestleMania main events of all time. I'm just going to put it out there just now. Yeah, Roman Reigns, vastly underrated for years, and had the most interesting run of his career. Edge, who's just Edge, and Daniel Bryan, that's all you need to say about him. I think with the three of them in there, this is going to be an absolutely amazing event, main event, if they give them the time they need. But that is going to do it here for a slightly less glitchy live stream than we had last night. I'm actually here at the end of it, unlike last night where I was kicking my router. Want to thank Scott McLeod for joining us for night 2 of the WrestleMania preview.
Yeah, it's nice to be here when we can actually make sense of what each other are saying.
Yes, and David, before you go complain to whatever company does your Wi-Fi, I want to thank you for soldiering on the 3 the 3 live streams we've done this week.
Yeah, I've got a work in progress solution. So hopefully, when we do future ones, this won't be such an issue.
Yeah, okay. It's fine. The technology was against us one of the nights, but we've powered through and we've got to the end of it, so that's not too bad. Just letting our producer Stephen Wilson know that we are wrapping up. I want to thank Stephen for giving us time to both play Daddy Daycare and producer to us. I want to thank Daniel Campbell for Wednesday's live stream. He done a great job in producing that. Thanks Ryan Wilson. Stephen is the best. That's probably Stephen that's commenting that. I want to thank Ryan Gallagher for joining us on Wednesday's NXT stream. Thank you to everyone who commented and watched. Thank you, Jack, Alan, Grant, Michael Clothier, Kwaku, although he only really commented to put his support behind DC Productions. Stephen is the best. Stephen, get off the Facebook page. Lawrence clearly came in and took the nephew back off him. Thank you. Thank you for watching us over WrestleMania week. We hope you've enjoyed it. We're going to be back with our next live preview, which I believe is Money in the Bank. There's now 5 weeks there, so Dave can get a new Wi-Fi provider. So we'll be back to cover that. Find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram.
No, you're not.
Oh God, we're being spammed.
Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and everywhere that you can tweet or text or send an Instagram direct message saying Stephen is the best at Suplex Retweet. We also have our massive back catalogue, Eat, Sleep, Suplex Retweet. See, that's Stephen's fault. On iTunes, Anchor, Spotify, and all good Android podcasting sites. And of course, Eat, Sleep, Suplex Retweet community. If you want to, if you want to get involved in the conversation
It's over.
and leave hurtful comments like Grant McRobbie, you can find us there, Eat, Sleep, Suplex Retweet fan community. Thank you for joining us. Enjoy WrestleMania Night 2. We'll see you soon. Bye.